Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unacademy, the one-stop destination for the civil services English medium aspirants. Welcome to the daily Hindu analysis. If I'm clearly audible and visible to you, please let me know in the live chat box and allow me to resume this session. Just write yes in the live chat if audio and video is absolutely clear. All right, all looks good. Let's start. In case you're starting your preparation, one very important thing that you must do is to see how questions are formed before even you start preparing. For that, we are organizing Unacademy's Civil Services Championship test on the 12th of July. The timings are 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. The questions are absolutely on the UPSC's new current pattern. They are made by subject experts. You can gain a lot of scholarship options using this test and of course all other prizes. Definitely make use of this on this particular date. The links are also provided in the description box below. Let's start with these topics from the Hindu Delhi's edition as well as from the PIB release of yesterday as well. Let's start with the first article itself. Now, the first article is about a recent US Supreme Court ruling on the matter of citizenship. Why is this important for us? Let's understand. In GS paper 2, you often are asked questions on comparative constitutions, right? So when we talk about comparative constitutions, they can ask you the difference between the type of citizenship model that India has and that is adopted in the US, right? So this becomes a good analysis on the matter of citizenship. Let's trace why this topic was in news and the context associated with it. Now, historically, when slavery was accepted in US and when US went through civil war in order to abolish slavery, one of the poor decisions that was made by the Supreme Court in 1857 was the Dred Scott decision or case. And in this decision, this was generally against the idea of slavery, or basically in order to keep the slaves that were initially black Americans, quote unquote, is to keep their citizenship denied or to not allow their children to have the citizenship of the country or the new country that is US that was being formed, right? So in this decision, the black Americans, which were formerly slaves, right? These, even if born in America or born in US, were denied citizenship. That means just by you being born on the soil of America or US, you would not be given the citizenship. This was overturned when the Constitution was being made with the 13th Amendment. With the 13th Amendment that happened later in 1865. This had abolished, it was very, very famous for abolishing slavery. After slavery was abolished in 1865, the rights were to be provided to the former slaves and black Americans so that they would not be stateless and they would be given the equal rights that are being provided to every American citizen of the time. So therefore, with the 14th Amendment of 1868, this guaranteed citizenship, it was a very broad term of guaranteeing citizenship, but this guaranteed citizenship to all persons, if you are born on US soil, to all persons that were born in United States of America. We took a very, very broad term. Anyone who's born on US soil is to ensure that the formerly enslaved population and their descendants were given equal rights and they would never be denied citizenship in this country. So that was the understanding, and that is why the 14th Amendment provided a type of model for US. And let's now understand the two models. The two models when it comes to citizenship are the two models, that is, if you are born in the country, or if you get it by descent, right? So one model is jus in, if you call it in the Latin phrase, or jus soli, and one is sanguinis. In this model of citizenship, these two models of citizenship, in this model, if you are born on American soil, the right of soil, it means that if you're born on American soil, irrespective of whether your parents are immigrants, foreigners, etc., you get the right to citizenship of that country. And in this model, that is right by blood. That means you have to be a descendant. You have to be born to parents, and through their citizenship do you derive your citizenship. So these are the two models that are adopted by different countries. Of course, there are other methods of citizenship as well. For example, in Indian case, there can be various ways through which you derive your citizenship. So in this method, US has predominantly acquired this method. That means citizenship is granted on the base of place of birth, irrespective of your parents' nationality. That does not matter, right? So this is accepted. How? By USA's 14th Amendment that we have just read in the context of their constitutional history. Various other countries also adopt this. So a child born in New York, irrespective of the parents, automatically becomes a US citizen, right? So that becomes a case in point. The context is that recently President Trump, with an executive order, not by law, but by an executive order, tried to restrict this principle or this criteria of citizenship. So this becomes the context of the news, why we are discussing citizenship models in the first place. What did President Trump do? He released an executive order, and he says that we will deny this automatic, that means if you're born, you will not automatically get citizenship on the basis of this principle. Who can be denied this automatic citizenship? In case you are born to illegal migrants, that means you are staying in US on illegal immigration, or illegally you are occupying a place in US. Or second, you are born to people who are staying then there in a form of a temporary resident. For example, temporary workers, for example, temporary students, etc. So if you are there for a temporary visa or immigration status, then also your kids will not get this citizenship automatically on this principle. This was of course challenged and taken up by the US Supreme Court. And the US Supreme Court struck this down and again upheld the principles of the 14th Constitutional Amendment Act. Right? So this was the context relating to the article that we are discussing. But let's go beyond this article, right? Let's go beyond this article and see that what all types of citizenship are provided, or different approaches to citizenship. One we have already done, jus soli or jus soli, that is based on soil. One is jus sanguinis, that is based on blood. The others are also examples. For example, in the context of India, we also have what is called as a hybrid version. What is a hybrid model? We accept the one based on birth, but we also accept the one based on descent along with other conditions. That is a hybrid model. There are also other models. For example, models such as naturalization. That means if you fulfill certain conditions, if you are acquiring, if you fulfill certain legal conditions, for example, residence for certain years, you know a language, you have shown good faith, character, etc. In that case also, India provides citizenship based on naturalization. It also provides citizenship based on registration. For example, if your spouse is an Indian citizen, you get eligible to get citizenship based on registration. The technicalities are not required for you, at least for mains answers. And they do not ask so in depth when it comes to pre as well. Right? There can also be citizenship based on economic investments. For example, you would have heard about the golden passport, etc. So if you invest a certain amount in certain countries, for example, Malta, then you get also a citizenship. There can also be others based on ethnicity, etc. So these are different models. India, of course, is providing a very broad criteria, various criterias for how you can gain citizenship. Now we do a little bit of an analysis. We go beyond the idea and we understand what are the problems with at least these two types, right? What are the problems with these two types? The advantages and the disadvantages with these two models. And why is there a backlash? For example, in countries like USA, which were earlier following this model, but now are finding it difficult, right? So let's just analyze it also very, very quickly. When we look at this model, we realize that the positives are that it promotes equality, right? Irrespective of the status of your parents, the nationality of your parents, the immigration status of your parents. If you're born on US soil, you are equal. You immediately become an equal US citizen. So this principle does promote the idea of instant equality of legal status. That means you're instantly the citizen of US. It also prevents the idea of statelessness. That means in a time like this, where statelessness is a major issue, for example, the refugee crisis, etc. Instantly a child born anywhere gets the status of a citizen of that place. It reduces the risk. It reduces the risk of children being stateless. That is also one major positive associated with it. The third is it also facilitates integration. That means it is not that only people of American descent will be prioritized, and therefore it will only continue to have an American descendant model. Integration means any form, even if immigrants coming from different cultures, nationalities, etc., their children will also be integrated or have space on the American soil. So it promotes integrations because it allows for the children of immigrants to also become US citizens. These are certain positives associated with it. Let's also look at certain positives associated with blood or by descent, by citizenship based on descent. It prevents or it preserves, as we call it, your national or cultural identity. That means, for example, only an Indian parent, their cultural identity will be preserved, and their children therefore will be more prone to having an Indian citizenship or should get an Indian citizen. That Indian parents with Indian culture, Indian nationality, etc. It is to preserve them, to give priority to them, to ensure that they are always continuing certain legacy of culture, nationality, etc. So yes, it preserves the national and cultural identity. It strengthens the ties with your diaspora. That means your diaspora can anytime come to India and therefore claim this across generations. It provides a clear lineage based eligibility. So it is easy to have legal access, right? But now the negatives also are there for this model. The negatives of this model are why President Trump had taken this decision. Let's understand this. The negative of this model is that it promotes something called as birth tourism. A lot of parents just because they want their children to have US citizenship, in fact fly to US during the time of their pregnancy in order to just give birth on American soil. So it is a very manipulative form of gaining American citizenship. So first problem is it promotes birth tourism where nationals travel specifically solely with this agenda. Because of this incentive that all you need to do is enter America, and then even if your child is born and you are illegal immigrants, does not matter, at least your child is secured. This will also in a wrong manner incentivize illegal migration or illegal immigration, something that apparently President Trump has said US is battling. And of course, this can also lead to various demographic concerns. That means excessive mixing can create a backlash by the original population or the native population against excessive immigration inside. Right? Especially during times of high immigration, there can be problems relating to demography, politics, etc. So because of this, where immigration to US, it's a very, very important pull factor country, is very high, there is a backlash from Americans in order to tighten border norms or for allowing opportunities to immigrants or their descendants and children. This has been a very important political campaign, a right-wing political campaign, also the MAGA campaign, Make America Great Again, or America for the Americans, which is why President Trump is looking at these kind of executive orders to ensure that immigration is tough, the incentive for immigration is tough, and not automatically does everyone gain American citizenship. Right? The negatives of this are also there. What are the negatives of the second model? This is a complex model. That means it will lead to various disputes. There can be disputes. For example, how do you understand the lineage? How do you look at the nationality, etc. There can be uncertainty because a lot of children can therefore be denied citizenship and statelessness, and it can also be criticized on both ends in that way, right? So it can increase the risk of statelessness, it can lead to uncertainness, and it can prevent social integration. That means you're only prioritizing your own nationality and culture. You're not allowing for integration in a globalized world. So it is against a global order or global citizenship related aspects. A hybrid model is of course much better because it gives you a lot of flexibility in order to change your policies. That means we have multiple policies. It has various opportunities or criterias. That means our citizenship is in fact inclusive as compared to other countries, right? That is also the case in point, and it allows for a mix or hybrid between the two models. So that is India's case, various ways and a hybrid model that India has. These kind of examples, now a lot of issue that you guys face is that how to use this. These kind of examples you can use when it comes to the backlash against globalization. In GS paper 1, you can say that President Trump's executive order trying to overturn the just solely principle is an example of backlash against globalization or the idea of a global citizen, right? So this can be used, and of course there can be a GS paper 2 question where you can say, or it can say, compare the two models, just solely and the other one, models of citizenship, discussing their merits and demerits, and discuss how India's model is inclusive. This can be a comparative question or comparative constitution question in GS paper 2. Let's go to the next article. Why are there concerns over WhatsApp usernames? Now, this article can be also used very, very well in GS paper for ethical dilemmas. Let me tell you how. Now, first understand the story. On WhatsApp, if you want to connect to a person, you must have their mobile number. Yes or no? Okay. But on other apps and other platforms, for example, Telegram, if you want to contact a person, you might not need their mobile number. What you need is their username, right? So a lot of people on Telegram who want to connect in a professional manner but not share their number probably can do that with a username. But that was not the case with WhatsApp users till a very long time, right? Okay. Now WhatsApp is now introducing a new provision or a new technology, an app feature in which WhatsApp allows you to communicate and use the app without sharing your mobile number. Basically, you can register your account, your WhatsApp account, your Meta account, anything that is attached to your mobile number, and using that registration, you can get a username. For example, without giving my number, I can get maybe an @Aastha P username, right? And that username now can be shared with other users if I do not want to share my mobile number. That is a feature that WhatsApp is introducing in India, right? Okay. The government, that is the Ministry of Electronics and IT, issued a statement and issued a comment reserving their concern, or basically expressing their concern with this username feature of WhatsApp, and requesting for WhatsApp that this feature should not be rolled in India. That is the context of the news. Now let's understand why. Now, WhatsApp's decision. One side is WhatsApp decision to add the feature of username, and on the other side is the government's concern, and they are trying to stop WhatsApp from this. Let's understand the rationale between the two. The rationale here is simple. WhatsApp says that this feature is primarily to protect the privacy of individuals. That is their argument. They basically say that we do not want every individual to use their mobile number to communicate on that platform, because mobile numbers now have a lot of attachment. Your Aadhaar is attached to your mobile number, your OTP, various OTPs come to your mobile number, your mobile number is often used to log in into various accounts. Your mobile number can therefore be put as someone else who is doing an identity theft, etc. So they said that mobile numbers are becoming absolutely important to secure, right? And that is an important part of privacy. And that is why they say that we will ensure that these usernames, for example, like how we do in Telegram, should be the way to communicate. WhatsApp says that don't worry, we will not have a public repository where you can go and search for usernames. That will not be the case. Only if you know someone's username, they have shared it with you, only then will you be able to communicate. So WhatsApp says that there will be no public directory of usernames. That means you can't randomly go and keep searching for usernames by putting someone's random name, guessing their surnames, etc. That will not be the case. So anyway, there will not be any concerns. WhatsApp also says that you can also add another security feature. For example, even if someone has found out your username, right, there can be a PIN security feature only when you give them a security pin along with your username can they connect with you, can they message you. Did you understand this? So just knowing the username alone will not be enough. No one can just find out and hound you. You can also add another feature, that is the pin feature. You will give the pin to another person who will then connect with you. You can share the pin. You can set this as an extra layer of protection. Right? Another is that if someone is using this feature to message you, at least the country will be shown to you, which country are they messaging you from, or in case they are in your contacts, it will also be notified to you. So WhatsApp said that this is our rationale, this is the reason, and we have also come up with all these extra precautions for this to not be misutilized. But there is also the government's concern. The government says that today, where various kind of thefts, identity thefts, cyber fraud, cyber arrest cases, etc. that are happening, they might increase with just this username feature that anyone can go and get. How is that possible? The government is saying that anyone can do impersonation. That means can act as someone else, as an agency, as a police officer, as a bank, etc. And in India's case, where their digital literacy is a little lesser, there can be concerns associated with it. For example, certain scammers can use, for example, usernames, random usernames, for example, @SBI_help, and they can say that we are calling from the SBI branch. They can use, for example, @police India or police UP, and they can be calling from this, @income tax support. So instantly when these kind of usernames are displayed in front of people, they can be scammed using this, specifically with India's lack of digital awareness or lack of digital literacy challenge. The second can also be identity spoofing. Identity spoofing is that they can again act as government employees, bank employees, right? Celebrities, friends, etc. They can pretend to be anything else. They say that without this proper mobile numbers, etc., this might increase the cyber attacks in India. For example, phishing attacks. For example, digital arrest attacks, right? These might increase in India as well, or OTP scams, etc. Because the person cannot immediately verify the phone number of the person, right? So that becomes the case as well. So these are the concerns between the government and WhatsApp. Can the government do that? The government can showcase concerns because Meta, which is WhatsApp, is a significant social media intermediary. So therefore, if there are any kind of features that lead to a threat when it comes to IT, etc., according to the IT Act, the government can interfere, right? For example, the notice that the government has sent treats the launch of this lawful feature as a wrong one that must be justified. In the notice, the government had said that WhatsApp is a social media intermediary, in fact, a significant one under the IT Act of 2000, and therefore is defined as a platform that has more than 50 lakh registered users. That is not important. The government said the platform is under obligation to ensure that any of its features are not used for any kind of these problems, right? So it should be withdrawn, etc. in that case. But that is something that the app is also contesting, and they are saying that everything is safe with this as well, right? How do you use this? You use this as a classic case of ethical dilemma in governance. You can use it in GS paper 2, governance related issues, but definitely in GS paper 4, between the dilemma between maintaining privacy at one end, individual rights, versus national security on the other hand. So just as an example, you can write WhatsApp username feature contested by the government. That becomes your example. That's all that you need to know from this article. Let's come to the next article. What are ICC's return to play post-pregnancy guidelines? Now, with the Indian women's cricket team also winning the World Cup and advancements of women participating in sports, in GS paper 2 or in GS paper 1, there can be a specific question on the multiple issues faced by women in sports, right? There are various issues that we hear about, or the entry back into sports, etc. There are various issues. For example, the first starts with stereotypes. That means women are not made for physical activities, for instance, sports. The stereotypes associated with women being delicate should be relegated to the domestic sphere, not specifically inclined or suited for physical activities. This stereotype is restricting first and foremost the entry of various women into sports. There have also been changes, yes. For example, multiple movies and role models have changed this stereotype, this notion, and this discrimination. Movies such as Dangal promoting girl child's entry into sports is something that you can also write about. The next is associated with various breaks or the kind of restrictions by, for instance, in-laws or after marriage that can also hamper. For example, the moment a girl is married, various limitations, for example, limitations in terms of training time, when should you train, when should you go, etc. There are also various kind of suspicion associated with it. For example, the sex ratio in these training academies is often disputed or distorted towards excessive male presence. A lot of trainers, in fact, are also men. This also makes it problematic for married women, where there are restrictions by in-laws, sometimes suspicion by the husband, etc. So this also creates a limitation in that space. Another limitation is the lack of inspiration. For example, not many female sportsmen or sportsperson. That also reduces the amount of inspiration and role model based pull that is required. Another major issue is associated with the lack of dedicated facilities. For example, the lack of dedicated female coach, the lack of dedicated dressing rooms that are designed for women. In fact, sometimes even the lack of specific toilets in sports academies when it comes to women, right? There are also rising instances and cases of sexual harassment. This was also the case a few years ago. A lot of female wrestlers, in fact, had spoken against the possible sexual harassment associated with sports board, academies, etc. And of course, the major hassle or the issue associated with choosing between motherhood, embracing motherhood, and returning back to their sports career. So, pregnancy related disruptions are major, massive, right? That is also the case in point. Why? Because physically, there is a change in your body. There are changes in the body of women. So, it takes time for them to adapt, come back, resume training. Even how they are during their pregnancy, that is also very important, because is the right kind of nutrition given to them? Are they still continuing an active pregnancy? How they are treated during the pregnancy will decide how quickly they can resume the training after or postpartum, right? There should also be hand-holding services post-pregnancy. For example, a support of a nutritionist, a support of a psychologist, a support of a dedicated trainer. Basically, a holistic approach must be the case so that women come back after pregnancy, right? There should also be institutional support. For example, child care facilities at major sports academies, creche facilities, daycare facilities. That should also be the case in point, right? And of course, the change in behavioral and attitudinal change, not seeing women the moment they are pregnant or delivered a child as the end of their sports career, right? So, in light of all these, there have been certain guidelines that have been released by ICC, that is International Cricket Council, and they said that we would require various sports board of different countries to create their guidelines on the model of these guidelines that we have ensured to ensure inclusive sports for all gender. So they have announced a guideline called the return to play post pregnancy guidelines that can be used by various boards, for example the Indian Cricket Board, etc., and member countries to design their own policies. What are the main highlights of these guidelines? The main highlights of these guidelines are centered around the idea that we need to provide a holistic support to women in this period. Holistic means every kind of support, whether it is practical support, solutions given, when can you come back, physical support in terms of nutrition, training, etc., and even mental health, psychological support for them to return to play. Every woman should be given a specific assigned case manager, whether a doctor or a physiotherapist, who will serve as the primary point of contact that she can contact throughout her pregnancy. The idea is to also ensure that we create a framework, the 6R framework, where we will have different weeks to review, to bring them back, to recondition and to refine them, right? In order to address the social barriers. We will also have to provide various other services or support. For example, maternity or paternal policies must be updated. India has one of the worst paternal or maternity benefits associated with women in sports specifically, right? Australia has a very, very important parental policy which includes paid leaves, benefits, etc. So this should be emulated. This best practice should be followed. There are also various sports or cricketers who have come back after pregnancy. For example, Sneha Deepthi in the context of India, right? That is also an example. Masaba class in the context of South Africa. These are mothers and they have competed at the global stage, right? So therefore, the idea is to ensure that motherhood penalty, the disadvantage of choosing motherhood, should not come in the sports field as well. They should not take the additional burden, and we should provide them proper systemic support and protections so that they can return back to play. How can you use this? You can use this in GS paper 2 whenever, or GS paper 1, if there is a question on women or women's participation in different fields. You can write about sports and you can write about ICC's return to play post pregnancy guidelines as an example. Just small examples that you can now gain from the newspapers every single day, right? Let's go to the next article. India's essential medicine list lags behind global benchmark. It has not been revised in the last 4 years. First and foremost, let's understand what is the national list of essential medicines. Now, national list of essential medicines is a list that is subject to change. We keep updating it time and again, right? It is formulated by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It includes medicines that are essential for common day-to-day diseases, and they are essential also for those diseases that are a priority or a concern in the healthcare landscape of the country. What is the agenda of creating a list like this? The agenda of creating a list like this is to ensure the constant affordability of these lists, of these medicines. So for example, if there are 300 plus drugs on this, these are absolutely essential. Some can be basic disease drugs, some can be life-saving drugs, some can be cancer-related drugs, etc. The idea is that if there is a medicine on this list, then the authority, that is National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, NPPA, gets the power under the Drugs Price Control Order to cap the prices of these drugs. Why? So that these drugs that are absolutely essential will not become exorbitant according to the whims and fancies of the private sector. They remain affordable because they are so essential for saving lives or for basic day-to-day healthcare challenges. So this is one of the main rationale. Of course, the authenticity, the quality is of course checked by the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. It must be approved by them. They should be safe, they should be cost effective, they should be highly effective for the diseases that they are treating, etc. That is an essential criteria. But why are we doing that? The reason why we put them in the list is so that the NPPA can ensure that there is certain amount of cap on how expensive these drugs can be, so that there is availability and affordability of these drugs in the NLEM. The criticism that is just on the first page of the Hindu is simple. That WHO, so we model a lot of this list on the WHO list. WHO also releases a list of essential medicines. So we keep updating the list based on this. The WHO list, model list of essential medicines, was revised in 2023, again in 2025, last year, and covered many medicines, 500 plus medicines. But in the case of India, we have not revised this list since 2022. So it has been 4 years and the updation is now long. This is also an example that you can write in GS paper 2 health, where you can say issues relating to medicine, or what you say miscellaneous expenditure relating to healthcare. The lack of updation of NLEM according to WHO standards. Very good. Let's go to the next article. Now this you simply need to know from a basic point of view. The CAR T cell therapy. What is the CAR T cell therapy? CAR T cell therapy is simple. First, we extract T cells. Okay, T cells are extracted from a patient's blood. For example, you take the blood of a person and you extract the white blood cells. White blood cells are generally for fighting any kind of infection. They act as fighting agents of your body. So white blood cells, whenever, for example, you get an infection, the white blood cell count increases in your blood tests, etc. So you extract these white blood cells that contain T cells. They are extracted. The procedure you do not really need to know, but this is the first procedure of the CAR T cell therapy. Now these T cells that are extracted, these are genetically modified. That means there is a biotechnology function used in this therapy. They are modified in such a way that now they can, after they are introduced in the body, they can fight cancer cells. So once they are modified in the laboratory to specifically produce certain proteins that can go bind with these cancer cells and kill them, or be actual receptors for cancer cells. So basically, genetically modified these T cells to produce certain proteins that is called CAR, chimeric antigen receptors. You just need to remember CAR. And then once these CAR T cells are made with this protein, they are multiplied. They are multiplied in the labs. Many of them are created. And then they are again reintroduced in the person's blood. Right? They are again reintroduced. They are infused back into the patient, where they now hunt down the cancer cells. The re-engineered cells are multiplied until they are millions, and they are infused into the patient's blood, and now they act as attacker cells. First, they recognize, because they have the protein receptor, they recognize the cancer cell and they guard you against it or against a recurrence. That's all that you need to know from CAR T cell therapy. Next, now this article, Assam, the state of Assam has just released a booklet showing the kind of butterfly diversity that the bodoland area has. You just need to remember certain names of butterflies. Why? Because UPSC has asked a previous year question on butterfly in pre, and UPSC has also asked certain questions they've clubbed certain species names and they've asked what is this? Are they birds? Are they butterflies, etc.? So you just need to broadly know the name so that in case a question like this comes in pre, you are not clueless, right? For example, the yellow crested spangle is an example. The sweep hose flat is an example, right? The other examples include Moore's cupid or Masuri bush bob, the green owlet, right? These are examples of these butterflies found here. The Indian cupid, the white line bush brown, these are examples, right? So you can just remember these few examples. Just even if you read them 1-2 times, you will at least not mistake them for a bird. And that's all that is required. Clear? Okay. Next, certain PIB related news. PIB is generally very important when it comes to certain schemes related updates, some new invention by the government, new policy changes, or some new portal that they have released. So recently the Prime Minister had inaugurated a new terminal building at the Jodhpur airport. Jodhpur being a remote city, has the idea is to ensure the integration and enhance the regional connectivity under a scheme that is called as the UDAN scheme. You do not need updates and information on Jodhpur. You in fact just need updates and information on what the UDAN scheme was, because this is part of the UDAN initiative as well, right? So the UDAN initiative is Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik scheme, was part of the National Civil Aviation Policy of 2016. It was a 10-year vision. The idea was to ensure that not just metros, but tier 2 and tier 3 cities that see very low regional air connectivity are now connected. Their airports are developed, their airstrips are developed, flights are flying on those routes in a competitive, affordable manner as well. So the idea was to connect tier 2, that means the less connected, and tier 3 cities with a financially, when the government will enhance or incentivize the airlines to run their routes or to run their flights on these routes by financially incentivizing them, right? So for example, if a flight is facing a certain gap in terms of revenue, by operating their flights on this model, for example, if the seats are not full, the flights are not full, right? They are not getting enough revenue as compared to other routes, etc. So if it is not viable for them, economically viable for them, the government provides some form of incentive in the form of viability gap funding, right? So what are the components of the UDAN scheme? There is going to be a viability gap funding given to airlines to ensure that they keep the fares affordable and they still keep running their flight operations on these routes. So that the flight operations, for example, if only one airline is running, they can have a price at any point. To ensure that there is affordability, there is also a airfare cap that they can use in order to keep affordability. There are also the collaboration. The center will collaborate with the states, with airport authority, with private airport operators, etc. to ensure that certain taxation, certain taxes that are levied on the aircrafts, for example, landing charges, etc. those are also rationalized and reduced if flights are operating at these airports. So these are also incentives. For example, airport operators, they waive landing and parking charges for these flights and they do not levy terminal navigation landing charges on these flights. So this becomes an incentive for enhancing their revenue. So for example, the government had also said for the first 3 years, the excise duty on ATF, that is the aviation turbine fuel, is going to be capped at only 2%. So these kind of agreements were also made in order to incentivize the airlines. So this can also be a prelims MCQ. Small parts can be asked associated with it. Let's come to the next one. Now this is fairly simple. The Prime Minister had just simply praised a platform called the E Jagriti portal. In this, the Prime Minister had simply said, and what is the E Jagriti portal? E Jagriti portal is basically for you to file various complaints as a consumer. So it's almost a consumer rights complaint grievance redressal platform by the Department of Consumer Affairs. It has made grievance redressal very easy. You can file your complaint, you can see the status of your complaint, you can generate OTP based registrations, you can make digital payments, fees, etc. Right? You can have virtual hearings. That means you do not have to go to a consumer court. You can exchange documents, for example, if you want to put your guarantee card, etc. online, and you can track those cases on a real-time method. So it has made the process of consumer grievance redressal very easy. The E Jagriti portal, something that you must know about. The idea is to make it accessible. Anyone can file a complaint, an NRI or a citizen. That means NRIs do not have to come to India to go to a consumer affairs ombudsman court to file one. It has enhanced the efficiency and speed. That means real-time updates, quick SMS, etc. It has made it inclusive. That means user-friendly, multilingual, multiple languages, etc. And it allows for secure transaction in case money has to be put into your account or you have to pay a fee, etc. Right? So this you will use as just one example in GS paper 2 whenever you are writing about e-governance based examples. That's all that you need to. So with that, we have come to an end for today's session. In case you have benefited from this past 1 hour, make sure that you like the video. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow again for the Hindu analysis. Take care. Bye-bye.